Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus through the Gospels. We're doing this chronologically, and so we're doing it in order as it, not typically as it's laid out in the Gospels, but as it chronologically happened. And so today we're looking at Jesus telling about forgiveness and faith, and this comes from Luke 17 verses 1 through 10. He says, one day, as the Jesus said to the disciples, there will always be temptations to sin, but what sorrow awaits the person who does the tempting. It would be better for to be thrown into the sea with a millstone hung around your neck than to cause one of these little ones to fall into sin. So watch yourselves. If another believer sins, rebuke that person. Then, if there is repentance, forgive. Even if that person wrongs you 7 times a day and each time turns again and asks for forgiveness, you must forgive. That's a hard thing. That's a hard thing to do. The apostle said to the Lord, show us how to increase our faith. And the Lord answers, if you have faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, may you be uprooted and be planted in the sea, and it would obey you. When a servant comes in from plowing or taking care of sheep, does his master say, come and eat with me? No, he says, prepare my meal, put on your apron, and serve me while I eat. Then you can eat later. And does the master thank the servant for doing what he was told to do? Of course not. In the same way, when you obey me, you should say, we are unworthy servants who have simply done our duty. And so, just a short little section of teaching here on forgiveness and how to increase your faith and how to behave as followers of Christ. And so Jesus here is warning about God's wrath against those who offend, abuse, or lead astray the little ones. And we need to take this serious, very serious, obviously. And unfortunately, sometimes it's not taken. Well, I won't say it's not taken seriously, but it's we just see every day more and more little ones being hurt by the people in the church, and so we've got to keep our eyes open and be aware of these things around us and what's going on, right? So we got to guard, right? We got to guard against definitely physical abuse, and that's something that unfortunately we just keep seeing more and more reports of, and I understand that the news media is going to grab a hold of those things that happen in the church, especially that can make the church look really bad. But I mean, really, we should not see as much of this stuff happening in the church as we're seeing. And so we've got to work against the mental and spiritual corruption as well, not just physical abuse, but mental and spiritual corruption that we see in the church. We've kind of talked about this a little bit, especially over the last couple of weeks and stuff. Leadership's got to be held accountable. One of the things that we're seeing even this week, and it's come up in some of the groups that I'm a part of, is we're just seeing one leader of the church, fall after another. I think there's been two this week, and it's like, what's going on? And most of the time, it's or a lot of times it's sexual sin. It's I mean, shoot, the other one was with a kid, and it's just heartbreaking. And so we've got to make sure that we hold people accountable and that we're not putting leaders and people in leadership positions where they're not allowed to be challenged, where they're not allowed to be called out on their sins. And too often we're seeing people, it's being covered up for them. Like their behavior is being excused and it's being covered up because we don't want to make the church look bad. And it's like, then it ends up looking a whole lot worse because it's like, oh, well, yeah, everyone knew this guy was this way or this lady was this way, but yeah, we didn't do anything about it. It's like, oh, the God's warning us against this. And so, one of the way this is can be interpreted is he says the little ones, right? And I think when Jesus was talking about this, he was talking about the children, for sure. But I think also this can be applied in as a warning too about an additional group, and the little ones being new disciples, right? I mean, you think about it. We call them babes in Christ, people who are, and so if we're doing things as supposedly mature Christians, right? If we're doing things as supposedly mature Christians that are causing the little ones to stumble, right? God is warning us against that. It's like, man, it'd be, I mean, you think about that. It'd be better for a millstone to be hung around. If you know what a millstone is, this massive, huge thing of rock that they would grind corn down with. It'd be better for it to be tied around your neck and thrown into the sea. And so, I mean, you think about that. God is saying, look, it'd be better for someone to drown you than for you to cause one of these little ones, either I would say either a new Christian or a child, to stumble. And so we've got to do a better job of sticking up for, holding ourselves accountable, holding our leaders accountable, holding those around us accountable, and do that. And so we got to be careful because indifference to the training and treatment of new Christians, especially, can leave them theologically vulnerable. And leave. I think that's why we see, one of the things that Dad would talk about whenever they first started in the ministry is they baptized a lot of people. They baptized a whole lot of people. They converted a whole lot. Excuse me, a whole lot of people. But at the end of the year, they turned around and looked, and hardly anyone of the people that they had converted were still there. And what were they doing? They were baptizing people, and basically they said they would baptize them, leave them on the steps of the baptistry, and run out and get someone else. And so they weren't developing the people who were baptized. And I think so much time, like so many of us either we convert people, we baptize people, and we put such a focus on that we just walk away after that stuff. So I go, well, you're good. And that's not. There's more to it. We're to make disciples, right? And so we've got to continue working with them. And so we need to make sure that we follow through with recent converts and new members. And we need to make sure that's a high priority in our churches, that we're focusing on that, and that we're building them up into stronger, more mature Christians, and not just converting them, baptizing them, leaving them on the steps, and walking off. And they're just, okay, what in the world? They need to help. When you have a baby, right? You don't just bring the baby home, throw it in a bassinet, and be like, oh, you'll be good, right? No baby's going to survive that. And that's happening with Christians and Christianity as well. So we need to make sure we do that. Then he moves on and says to rebuke those, right, who are sinning, and to rebuke people, right? And I think sometimes just like us, like you think of like yelling or really getting on to someone, and that's not the point of of this. And it's not the point to like we shouldn't rebuke every person for every sin we see. We'd spend all of our time doing this, but it means simply to bring sin to someone's attention with the purpose of restoring that person's relationship with God and with fellow humans. So it's like someone's committing a really serious sin, and it's not like I'm not talking about. It's like we're gonna sin every day, right? Every one of us sins every day, so we can't just sit around and rebuke each other or call each other sin every day. Although some of us like to try to do that. But it's where you see someone struggling and you go to them and say, hey, you kind of call that sin out, but you do it in a loving manner. You do it in a manner of, hey, this sin is hurting your relationship with God, and we need to help you with that. And so that's where we need to work on that. And so that's what it means to rebuke someone. And so when you feel you must rebuke another Christian for a sin, you've got to check your attitude first, because we're really good at calling people out or pointing others people's sins out while we ignore our own. And so the main thing is, one, do you love that person? Are you going to them in love, right? And are you willing to forgive, especially if it's a sin against you? Like if you're calling someone's sin out, it's a sin against you, then definitely are you going to them, calling them out in a loving way. But if you're going to them about something that's sinful against you, are you willing to forgive them for that as well? Because unless your rebuke or your calling out of sin is tied to forgiveness, it's not going to help the sinning person. And here's the other thing that you need to be prepared for. One, definitely be prepared to forgive the person, but also at the same time, sometimes you need to be prepared for the fact that they're not going to fess up. They're not going to admit to their sin, and then they're, excuse me, and they're going to be like, "Look, I didn't do anything wrong." So so sometimes there's other methods that we have to go about with that, but we're going to stick to this just one today. And so if we have obeyed God, we have done our duty. If we've gone to Him in a forgiving attitude, and we should regard that as a privilege, right? And the other thing that we have to look at too, and then he shifts into it as in serving God and obeying God, we need to make sure that we look at God, serving God, as our duty. And sometimes, like, I think we feel like we need to have, like, we deserve extra credit for serving God. Oh, look what I did. Yeah, I'm a follower of God, but look what I did, God. Look at these things. And that's what he's talking about with the servant, and the master, right? What servant, if when works for the field, expects to be like glorified for the work that they know they're supposed to do? And like he talks about coming and eating with him, it's like, no, he didn't come and eat. He goes to and serves and fix the master's meal first. And so we need to make sure that we're not doing things just to try to get extra credit. And we also mean it's not something extra we do. We need to understand It's not extra. Serving God is not extra. It's our duty. It's what we're called to do. And so we need to make sure that we're doing it. And the other thing here is Jesus is not suggesting that our service is meaningless or useless. He's just saying, don't, he's nor is he advocating doing away with its rewards, right? What he is attacking here is unwarranted self-esteem and spiritual pride, or self-righteousness, right? You thinking that you are awesome because, oh, look at all these things that I'm doing that no one else is doing, or someone so and so over here is not doing this, so I must be a better, and he's saying, look, we're all servants. What servant goes around bragging because he did some work for his master? And that's what he's comparing this to. It's like, look, this is what you're called to do. All right, you're not getting extra credit for it. You were called to serve, so serve, and don't try to get self-rewarding out of it, or some kind of extra praise. Now, if someone praises you or calls you out, and there's nothing wrong with that, but if that's your intention and that's what you're seeking for it, then that's all you're going to. Jesus talks about that. He talks about with the Pharisees. He said that's all you're going to get. That's all the praise that you will get, if that's your purpose behind it. If it's not a true, I'm serving God, and this is the reason I'm doing it, to serve God, then he says that praise that you get for that's all you're going to get. There's going to be no reward for you in heaven. So we need to be very careful with these warnings that he's given us. Mainly, man, focus on protecting our children, protecting young Christians, making sure that we have resources for them, right? Forgive those who hurt you. It's hard. Trust me, I know. It is hard. Now, it's easier whenever people ask for forgiveness and they're truly remorseful, and you come to them and say, hey, you did this, and they're truly remorseful, and they truly ask for forgiveness. But there's going to be those others, and I've experienced this as well, that you go to them and say, hey, this was wrong. You shouldn't have been doing this. And they're going to be like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't see a problem. And it's like, you still have to forgive them, but it's a little bit harder. It's a lot harder, because it's like, oh, okay, you have to walk away from that. And so we do that. And then the other thing is, we just got to make sure that the true reason we're serving God is to serve God, because it's what he's called us to do, not because we think we get some credit, or trying to get the praise of man through doing it, because that's a very dangerous road to go down. And Jesus says that's all the praise you're going to get. As always, I appreciate everyone for watching and paying attention to these videos and going through these lessons with us. I think we're on like day 169. It's going to be a little over 250 days, so we got, I think, about 100 days to go in this. I appreciate you for watching. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and do so. We're going to continue to do different studies after this, and as we go through. But as always, I appreciate you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.